at Summit. It's called What Awesome Sauce Tastes Like. And it's hard to put into words exactly what these guys do, but the doctors are in the building. We have a process for talks getting submitted where, it's very formal. There's a submission. We consider the best one. And then sometimes your CEO says this needs to be at Summit because this is part of Atlassian's secret sauce. And this, if we can share this with our customers, then we've given them something really meaningful and really special. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dom and Ben.
Thank you very much for coming today. I know some of you are probably sporting hangovers. We can't actually help with them. We are not qualified for that in any way. Quick introduction, I'm Don Price. I head up program management across Atlassian. Best job I've ever had in my life, 12 locations, great team and great workforce, and I get to work with people like Ben.
And I'm Ben. I'm a principal design strategist at Atlassian, and what that essentially means is that I do all the upfront design rather than down into the interface. I design with people rather than pixels, which is why I get to work with this handsome gent here. Yeah.
So before we start, Ben.
So Dom, as I said before, I know we've been to the Big Bash, and I look out here and I see a room of good-looking, slightly hungover people,
yeah.
perhaps. But Dom, you know what else I see? I see a room of doctors. Now, one of the things that we really want to impress upon you throughout this whole talk of what works for us as part of the awesome sauce that we have at Atlassian is we want to see us as doctors and our teams as patients. And that's something that we want you guys to think about as well. I want to see if you can see yourselves as doctors and your team is your patient. And just like any patient, your patient will present with vital signs, Dom, won't they? Like blood pressure and things like that. Now, we are not real doctors.
It's true, we're not.
We are not real doctors. What we want to do here is have some serious fun with you guys. But we will impress upon you. This works really well for us. May not work exactly well for you. Mileage may vary. You will have your own little tweaks. And as we go through it, you'll find that this is actually part of the magic. You get to work this out yourself. A little more on that later.
Cool. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover what unhealthy teams are. What we're going to give you is some examples of what we found were unhealthy teams. Then we're going to look at the health monitor, which is what you're actually here for. We'll take you through some of that context. We're then actually going to do one. We're going to do one live in the room with you, because our belief is that it's way better to practice this stuff than to listen to me and Ben talk about theory. We also have no content, so it'll make the 45 minutes go quicker. And then once we've done your turn, we actually want to hear from you. So anyone who is introverted in the room who doesn't want to speak, we're going to pick on you because we want to hear how you find the experience and what you're going to do afterwards. So you all with us? Yeah. Hey! Right. So why did we do this? So there's great news in Atlassian, and I think there's great news in most of your organizations. We tend to have great intentions when we start projects and start teams. It's very rare in my experience in Atlassian, and hopefully for you guys and girls, that you start projects with malicious intentions. There may be a few people like that, but you weed them out over time. So you start with great intentions. You then have these wonderful, great people that you hire around your business, okay? And you're surrounded by these people in your teams. And then you have this wonderful energy in Atlassian. We also celebrate this energy, this vibe and culture and values. So you have these things, and as a byproduct of that, you tend to ship stuff. So hands up if in your business you're good at getting shit done. It should be all of you, really. Excellent. Otherwise you're totally at the wrong conference. Now the problem is some teams consider shipping to be the end goal, and it's not. It's just part of the journey. So the flip side, I can talk personally about projects and teams I've worked on where I've not got a clear owner, and that's really annoying. It's annoying because I don't know who to escalate to. It's annoying because I don't know who's making decisions. It's like having a blended family. You go to one parent who won't give you chocolate, so you go to the other parent. Now that's good when you're buying chocolate, but when you're in a team, that can be really confusing. I've also been in teams where they didn't quite gel. I can tell that because you look around the room and you've just got a group of individuals. They've not got each other's backs. They're not working together. When the strategy's fuzzy, when you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. And that, for me, the telltale sign is when I get to a Friday afternoon and I think, I've been really busy this week. I have not got a clue what I've done. Anyone ever had that feeling? Yeah. All right, it's like Groundhog Day. You just continue going through this cycle. I'm busy, but I don't know if I'm effective. And then the last one for me, which is the killer, no clear timelines. So I'm just working in perpetuity. I'm busy on this thing, and I think I'm making progress, but how long should I be spending on it? What's the right amount of time? When do you expect me to be finished? When does my next person in the flow expect me to give something to them? So the net result of those things, confusion. And we don't like this confusion because it causes two side effects that are really annoying: inefficiency and ineffectiveness. Now, you heard Scott and Mike both talk about how we want Atlassians to do the best work of their life. Now, if they feel inefficient and ineffective, they're not going to do the best work of their life. They're going to get drowned by bureaucracy, and we don't want that. We want them to do great work. So, why do we do this? Well, we did this because when you think about the concept of teams, they're a network effect. They are all connected. So even when you think you're working as an individual, or if you think you're in a self-contained team, you're probably not. You have something that came to you for you to do that piece of work, and that piece of work that you're doing as a team goes to someone else. And in the Atlassian world, across 12 GOs, 2,000 employees, and lots of different disciplines, having a different vernacular about how we talked about teams and projects and work created this really painful knock-on effect. We ended up with different processes, different language. And so when people were moving around, teams were like, that would have been on track in my old team, but you call it off track. You call it on track, or is it at risk? Oh, it's at risk. Oh, cool. And it became really confusing and hard for people to move around. But the worst part, and this is certainly something in a flat structure that really causes pain, is the unnecessary complexity that you bring in. So what we found was a lot of our teams had built hacks. They built hacks and workarounds because they're smart people. But those workarounds became the norm. And so we ended up with all this accidental complexity in the business. And there's enough real complexity in the business without the accidental stuff. So we wanted to find a way of getting rid of it.
That's right. So much of it we found when, as Dom said, we went around the business throughout Atlassian and we talked to just about every team who would stand still long enough for us to ask these kind of questions about their efficiency and effectiveness. What we found is it all boils down to this. It boils down to confidence. With all that kind of ambiguity and complexity and moving goalposts, you guys know what it's like, right? It all comes down to confidence in yourself, that you are doing the job that you're meant to do, confidence in each other, in the team, and confidence in the people who you are managing and whoever is managing you. And so if we could put it all in one kind of postcard, it's this. We want to make sure that every team at Atlassian is really clear and confident that they are building the right thing in the right way with the right team at the right time.
Now, we actually went out to a whole of our teams when we produced this statement and said, when are you confident that you're doing the right thing in the right way at the right time, my team? Anyone care to guess when they have that confidence? When they ship. It's a bit late, isn't it? So what was happening is our teams were working in a void without that confidence. They were hoping, right? And hope's not a strategy. So they were hoping that things would be all right. And they were working with these great intentions, but they didn't have that confidence they were going to succeed. And what we wanted to do was to find a way of bringing that confidence forward in the process, finding patterns that gave them that confidence early on.
And those patterns that we found ended up being, if you like, a set of vital signs. So as I mentioned before, you know how if you're the doctor and your team is the patient, these are the heart rate, the blood pressure, the BMI, things like that. These are the 8, if you like, health areas that for us represent a recipe for success. And what I'd like to do is to go through each of these because we want to get a shared understanding of what these are. Now, as I mentioned, the words kind of work for us. They may not work for you. That's great, and that's the sort of thing that is up for you to work out with your own team. But hopefully you'll find the intent behind these really resonates with you. So the first one is a full-time owner. And as Dom said before, like no one wants to be in a team where people are gaming the team and going to dad for chocolates rather than mum and things like that. We've got to know essentially whose ass is in the sling if this goes pear. Who is really driving this? And particularly in teams where, collaboration is great and we're all part of the same outcome. All those sort of motherhood feelings is nice, but sooner or later, someone needs to make a call, and everyone else needs to know who that is. So that's the full-time owner. The second one is balanced team. Now, this is balanced not only in the skills that you have, because let's face it, a lot of teams need to be cross-disciplinary. It's also about balance in terms of IQ and EQ, balance in attitudes, the way that you can get that nice mix of introverts and extroverts and all those sort of human factors that can play nicely in a team, and balanced in the level of proficiency as well. That's balanced team.
We also added in there roles and responsibilities, which anyone who's a traditional project manager will be familiar with, and that was important for us because our teams change a lot. So the concepts we're talking about here is a team very rarely stays the same. New people come to it, people move off it, you change teams, and in fact, as an individual, you're probably a member of several teams. Knowing what your role is in each of those teams, we find very important.
And a third one, and for me, this is crucial, this is so important, getting a shared understanding. That's one of these ones that can really sneak into a team, and before you know it, there's too much ambiguity and different expectations going on, and so it's a shared understanding of what you're doing and why, and what success is supposed to be, which leads to the fourth one, value and metrics. The whole team needs to know what success is, how we're going to know, and I'm a big fan of talking about, rather than chasing the metric, you've got to chase the value, yeah? So it's good to know what the baseline is of whatever represents success. Have a target, and so that you know what metrics, what things you can measure to know that you're going to be successful. Now, that is really hard. It's actually hard to do that. And one of the things we find that helps is the fifth one, end-to-end demo. Now, this is going to depend on whatever the project is, be it a product or a service or a process you're working on. But we find it is so crucial to have some kind of demonstration of what it is that you and your team are going to make, so that other people outside of the team can say, oh, right, so now I see this demo, now I've got my expectations right. Or you can say, oh, that's not quite what I thought you guys were going to do. Now, that demo, it can be a set of sketches, wireframes, it can be a storyboard, it can be dressing up in a song and dance, whatever works for you. It's about getting clarity. And related to that is the next one, README, which is essentially a one-pager that everyone else in your organisation can read and know exactly what you and your team are doing. Oh, by the way, here's a really neat trick. You may want to try this. Get everyone on your team just to spend 5 minutes to write a press release on what that team is about, what you're making, and alone, and get them all together and compare them as a team. Even that simple thing is a really nice way to find where there's clarity and where there's ambiguity. And whatever your some version of that is, that's a README.
So for README, what you'll find is you can do a README without any words or without any documents. You do it through hand-to-hand combat. When you bump into Bob or Mary at the water cooler or over a coffee, and they go, what's that project you're working on?
Yeah, right.
You tell them the story, and then they tell the story, you tell the story again. The problem with that is it consumes a lot of your time, and if someone else answers, you end up with Chinese whispers. You end up with many versions of the truth. The README is a great way of, first of all, engaging your stakeholders, and then keeping them at an arm's length, because you often don't need them in the inner circle. And it makes that relationship a bit more formal and enables you to go, I'm going to give you weekly updates, here's what I'm doing, here's why, but I can't have you in my job every day because I need to get down and do it.
The second last one is dependencies. This one is a really obvious one, let's face it. And as Dom said, no team is an island. We all have to know what we're up to, who is depending on you, and who you are dependent on. And the last one we call velocity. It's really about pace. What is the appropriate pace for your team to be going at? Is it too fast and sloppy and scrappy and that might be fine? Or is it going too slow? Bottom line, are you stopping and reflecting to see how you can improve as a team? Are you baking those improvements back in so that the next sprint or the next milestone, whatever the next stage in the work you're doing as a team, you see that measurable improvement? That's what velocity is about.
So two very distinct things there. One, how fast are you going? And 2, are you learning as you progress?
Yeah.
What we found is a whole lot of teams were going fast, didn't know why they were going fast. Okay, so this gave them a chance to reflect, do a retrospective or any different ritual, and say, what do we need to do better? What do we need to stop? What do we need to start?
Yeah. Now, please bear in mind, the health monitor and this way of assessing team health, it's not a stick. it's not like a management stick to beat teams with. And now, I'm sure this is going to resonate with you, but particularly at Atlassian, we firmly believe on being the change we seek. We firmly believe on empowering all teams to do what works for them. So, team to team, however they get work done, however they track it, however they communicate, however they make decisions, have fun, whatever it is, it's up to them, provided that they reach those 8 health areas, that they're shooting for those outcomes. Because those outcomes we know are common for all teams. And so this is where the health monitor comes in.
So just a quick adjunct here. When we actually did the research, we looked at patterns and anti-patterns. So the patterns were historically successful Atlassian projects and other projects and teams we'd worked on in our experience. That was really easy to find attributes. Then we looked at the anti-patterns, which were those projects that just reading the project name gives you heartburn, cold sweats, and people want to leave the room. And we looked at what they were missing. And the reason that was an important analysis is those things at the bottom, they are based on your own rhythm and cadence as a team. Yeah. They're up for you to decide in an autonomous structure because it's what makes sense for you in your environment. And so trying to give guidance around that just doesn't add value, right? It's a distraction. Those 8 things above those attributes, we firmly believe that when you have those in abundance, you are more likely to be successful. So as Ben said, it is a carrot and not a stick, but it's also not a guarantee. So it's not a tick in the box exercise where you go through these 8 things and go, right, we've done the 8, move on. This is an evolving thing that you do as a team.
So far we've been talking about things in principle around these 8 health areas. What we want to do now is show you how the health monitor works, like what it is and how to do it. So the health monitor is both an asset and a session that you do with your team. For example, you start with the whole team in the room, not too many, so if you have outlying stakeholders, it's fine to leave them out of the room. You have your team, and individually, and this is exactly what you guys are going to be doing in this session, individually, everyone rates how they think their team is going with these 8 health areas. And what works for us is 3 colours, red, amber, or green. And in a way that forces people to really choose rather than get too fuzzy. For example, there is no such colour as gramber. You know, it's got to be green, amber, or red. And so everyone rates it, and then they come back together and they compare. And this is where the real magic starts, where you might have managers going, yeah, this is green, this is green, this is green, and the developers are going, this is red, this is red, this is yellow, this is amber. That is when you have these fantastic opportunities to have these crucial conversations. Now, I'm not sure if you remember when Mike brought up the team monitor in the fireside chat session the other evening. He talked about how it actually gives everyone in the team a better way to articulate what's going on, because you know what these things are like, right? When you know that there's something quite not right, can't put your finger on it, and you kind of lack the words to properly articulate what it is. This is where the health monitor lets you actually name it and name it together. It gives just enough structure to have those crucial conversations. So then you can say, okay, now I understand why you think it's green and I think it's red. Once you have those conversations, you do 2 things. You say, well, as a team, what are we going to rate it? Like, what's the one colour? That's a nice forcing function. And the second thing is, if it's red or amber, how do we get to green? That's really important.
So just some context here. Who uses checklists in their business? Okay, who finds checklists really valuable all of the time? Okay, not many people. So the reason I ask that is this is not a checklist.
Yeah.
The tendency people have with this is they go, all right, there's 8 things, there's boxes, I have a pen, this is good, it's good or bad, right? Doesn't work, okay? The other thing that doesn't work here, which is really, really important, is We should have a definition for what red means and what amber means and what green means. And you can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is you end up taking it away from a conversation and try and make it a mathematical exercise. The whole purpose of this tool and what we're going to go through today is around forcing a conversation that otherwise would be really awkward. So I've worked in plenty of projects where I've wanted to have a conversation with someone because something about the team doesn't feel right. But walking up to that person and having that conversation seems really confrontational. By getting those people in a room and using these 8 topics and these themes, you make it about the topics. And so that conversation is way less confrontational. So it depersonalizes that conversation a bit and makes it way easier to talk about the things that aren't quite working. And the reason that works for us, and hopefully for you as well, is what we've found is even when you're looking at the same object, because you're looking through a different lens because of your background, your experience, the function you work in, you will see something completely different. So the same 2 people can look at the same thing, and one says red and one says green. That's a really good conversation to have, because otherwise you will work in the obscurity of not knowing that and just continue anyway. And every day you'll go further and further apart.
So it's important to have these health monitor sessions at regular intervals, at a timing that suits your team and the dynamic of whatever it is that you're working on. And in this example here, you can see there's been 5 different sessions, 5 different checkpoints, and it tells a story over time, doesn't it? You can see that sometimes, things can start off a bit wobbly, and we have equipment now to, as I said, better name what is going on and have better actions that come out to get to green.
So who thinks we're just talking theory? Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. So the good news, we've delivered over 200 coaching sessions across Atlassian.
Yep.
I personally have been on a fair few planes around to Sydney, San Francisco, Saigon, and Austin to deliver these coaching sessions. And the principle we used here was by making it a coaching session with the team, it meant I only had to do every team once. I've not repeated any teams. And that's because once they've gone through the initial session, they actually run this by themselves. So I do the first session with them, and then they continue with that themselves. Those 200 sessions have meant we've touched over 800 people in the Atlassian world. And that for me is a great testament because we never forced people to attend. All we did was put posters around the office saying, if you want one of these things, put your name forward. If you don't, don't. In 1 week in Sydney, I did 36 one-hour sessions. A few weeks later, I flew to Austin. Steve in the corner, who runs our Austin office, put a poster of me dressed as a doctor in the office, and people were asking if it was covered on their insurance. It's not. But the most important statistic, and I love statistics, is the infinite number of relationships we've saved. And that's because you get rid of the stress at work. You have those conversations with your team, and so you don't get home and your wife or husband or partner says, how's your day? And you go, that team. I'm gonna strangle Bob and I'm gonna shoot Mary and they're driving me insane and they're not getting on, they're dysfunctional, I don't know what to do with them. I think I'm gonna have to fire everyone and start again. And it's probably not the people, it's the team dynamic. So what we found is our teams that have adopted this have got a new rhythm and cadence and a new mojo in the way they work. The testament here came from one of our detractors, someone who wasn't too convinced by the idea. Our head of engineering, Mike Melnicki, who runs our dev tools team in San Francisco. I was there a few months ago. He had a team that was struggling, and he said, I'm just going to kill the feature. I don't think the team's fine, but I think it's the feature, and it's just not working out. We're just going to kill it. It's easiest to kill it. So I sat down with the team for an hour, and we did a health monitor session, and they actually continued with that work, and they eventually shipped it. And Mike had a massive smile on his face because the feature is now highly used. So it wasn't the feature that was the problem. It was the team. So he literally turned around and said, we would not have shipped Bitbucket snippets if it wasn't for the health monitor. Now, that's not the only thing that helped them ship, right? A huge amount of technical acumen, hard work, all right, and a team working together. But the missing element that they didn't have was a way of working in a common language. And so that enabled them just to focus on the 2 areas where they were struggling, get those right, course correct, and then move on.
All right, now it's time to be that metaphorical doctor and to get your metaphorical team up on that bed, and we're going to learn by doing, aren't we, Dom?
Yes.
Okay.
He's ready to do an exercise. About 7 people. Awesome. Really. You're all asleep.
Excellent.
I'm not feeling healthy today.
All right, here's how it's going to work. What we'd like to do is to get you into pairs or threes. So if you've come with buddies from work or whatever, or if you've made friends along the way, that's great. Just get together wherever you're sitting, it's fine. If you're by yourself, just talk to the person next to you. Feel free to hobnob into an existing group, whatever works. But get into pairs and threes. That's the first thing. Now, have you all got something to write on and write with?
If not, we've got paper, so that's good. Just put your hand up and I'll bring paper
Has
out.
anyone not got things to write on and write with? Okay.
Do you want to carry on doing the instructions? I'll hand
So
these
Dom,
out.
the able-bodied doctor assistant here, will spread some resources
Who needs
out.
paper? Paper, paper, paper. Paper, paper, paper. Paper, paper, paper. Paper, paper. Paper, paper. Paper. Hand those down. I'll give you a few. Hand them down just in case. Paper, yeah. Hand a few down. Paper. You've all got laptops. Paper, paper. Hand those down. Bits of paper. Bits of paper. Hand those down. Few bits of paper. Few bits of paper. Hand those down along the way. Anyone else for paper? You use computer.
All right, we're nearly there.
Yeah. Anyone for paper? Paper, paper, paper.
Dr. Dom, we got a hand up over here.
Yeah. We'll go through it now. Anyone else need paper?
Just behind you there, Dom. All right, fellow doctors.
Okay.
Fellow
So
health
we've got,
practitioners.
just quickly. So we're going to give you 7 minutes. What I want you to do is with your partner, think about a project or a team you're working with back in the office, right? And just go through these areas and think about how you'd rate that team. All right, so you can't do the exercise as a team because your team's probably not here, but think about how you'd go through this and rate it red, amber, or green.
Yeah.
And grab my coffee. We should walk. Does anyone have any questions on the health monitor? Imagine you've got them in the room. A piece of work you're working on now. Go through the 8 areas. Lena got it. Okay. Oh, shit, that was loud. That's just cured my hangover. So that was a really short exercise. Just a few things that came up that I'll repeat for the rest of the room. The idea of the exercise there is just to get familiar with using the tool, right? You're never going to be able to do that because you've not actually got your team here. The idea is just to go through these 8 areas and start to get familiar with how they're connected, discuss some common themes. There's a couple of guys over here who are like, yeah, we're both struggling with the same area in our separate teams. How are you solving that? And that's the richness of the discussion. One of the other questions at the back was, is this a confluence table? It can be, but what we actually do here is, when we do this in the office, we do it with pens and paper, because it's all about the discussion, right? That informality of the discussion. So what we're going to do now is we are going to share our aha moments. Take on me. So if you'd like to raise your hand if you have an observation, something you found, something you experienced, anyone. Put your hand up. Ben's got the mic. We want you to share your experiences. Don't be shy. Come on.
No need to be shy. We're all honest.
So just right off the bat, I was thinking about full-time owner, and so I was just kind of thinking about my department on a whole, which I'm a manager in, and so personally I feel like that's green. Like, I know I'm the manager, so but then I kind of started thinking about things that I've witnessed with some of the other coordinators and specialists in my department, and realizing that there were times where they weren't always sure where, who they were supposed to go and ask questions to or things like that. So to me, that was a bit
we've had the exact same experience. In one of the sessions I ran, the team were doing it with thumbs. It was a big group, so we said, red, amber, green, full-time owner. They all went green. I was like, awesome, who is it? Bob, Mary, Jane. Ooh. Oh, you're not so green now, are you? So some of that is the formality, and not who is the assumed owner, but who is the actual owner, and does everyone acknowledge and know that? Any more observations?
Yeah, I was really excited to hear about this because I've been a Scrum Master and a project manager for one team. And I think my team that one team is functioning better than the other Scrum teams. And so I was trying to think of a way that I can spread that without being like confrontational, right? And so this is going to be a perfect thing for me to take to the other Scrum teams and do the sessions with them so I can share the success of our team across the board.
Awesome. So what you might find there, and one of the reasons we've run so many sessions in Atlassian is, as we started to identify more patterns of successful teams, we can then share those with the teams that are struggling. So this isn't just about shining a light on areas where you're not doing well and going, oh, that's rough, right? It's about going, we're struggling there. By the way, there's another team over here who have a pattern where that works really well. You should talk to each other. And so it's about taking those patterns and continually improving. Cool. Anyone else? Come on, someone's got to... Oh, they all jump at once now.
On my way. Microphone stat.
I was thinking about a project that we're just kicking off, and as I thought it was in pretty good shape, but as my teammates here asked questions, I ended up with actually a lot of reds, which kind of freaked me out. But then we also pointed out that when you start, you might have a lot of reds because there's a lot of ambiguity that you do need to clarify.
Yes.
So now I have some ideas about what to do when I go back.
Yeah, so that's another great story. So what we found with teams, so we split our teams down into 3 typical flows. Envision, which is a whole lot of idea creation where you try and converge on a solution. There's build or buy, where you actually do what we do most of the time, where you execute. And then the improve phase, where you're looking at the change you are hoping to affect and trying to measure that. And we find our teams in the envision stage, when they go through this, do have a lot of red. The danger there is that can cause paralysis. And you don't want that. You don't want panic. What you should do in that stage is to go, which of these areas are most pivotal to this team right now to get right? And it's going to be different every time. Normally 1 or 2 areas where you go, if we start with those 2 areas and get those to green, everything else will flow after that, rather than trying to move all 8 areas half an inch every day. Okay, Ben, we've got another question just down here.
It's not a question so much, but an observation. So for my company, we have about 60,000 employees spread out across 200 countries in the world. And so dependencies, trying to figure out dependencies and what kind of the domino effect of upgrading to the latest version of a browser or all the different applications that are in use that we have no idea. So that's something that I feel like we constantly struggle with on every single project.
So with dependencies, the idea is not just to be aware of how many you have, but to understand the risk you're taking on. So what I say to teams that have lots of dependencies, that doesn't mean you're red because you have a lot. It just means you need to have really active risk management. There's probably a few dependencies that are so tightly dependent that you should have a direct communication channel with them, versus the downstream dependencies where you're happy to keep them at arm's length. So the exercise here is, what is my environment and how should I approach that, versus how risky is it by itself?
So it occurred to me as we did this that a number of these attributes are connected, and some are actually derivatives of others. So README and shared understanding are sort of the obvious one that are largely overlapping, and then full-time owner and dependencies is sort of like the first derivative of that as well, because they're all communication-based. And what I've noticed looking at my list here is that it's really hard to justify having any one of these more than one color step apart from the other. If you have a green and README, you can't really have a red and shared understanding and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's got to be closer to that. Is that what you've found as well?
Yeah, so there is a lot of connectedness, and that's where some of our teams struggle, certainly when they've got a lot of red or amber. What we do there is to say, take a step back and try and look for the root cause. It's really easy to see all the symptoms, but take a step back. So what we find is if they're red on README, value and metrics, and shared understanding, don't fix all three of those. Pick one of them, nail it, and then goodness will come to the others. So the interesting thing is different teams start in different places. Some teams that I've been working with will start with a README, and they'll build the press release to then inform their shared understanding of why they're doing it. Others start with a shared understanding and use that to build the README. It can go either direction, very much dependent on the team. Okay, we'll just move on, so we've got time for Q&A. Just before we wrap up, pro tips. So for anyone who's going to go back and try and use this, these are some of the things that we found in running over 200 of these. Firstly, when you find a lot of red or amber or teams are struggling, two things. Only ever let them pick two things. Why? It forces them to focus on the most important things first. And it also forces them to think about the root cause. So in that gentleman's example, if you're struggling with a README and shared understanding and value and metrics, if you try and turn that into a piece of work, it might look too much. But when you just pick two of them, you focus on the high impact areas, you move them, you measure, and then you do the health monitor again. Constant iterations. Next one, stakeholder struggles. So not only is this a great conversation for the team in the room, but if anyone's looking for a tool for managing up, my boss is in the room and I use this all the time. And I use it because I can show him what I'm doing with my teams and then say, however, I'm struggling with full-time owner because I'm full-time owner on 7 projects and I don't feel like I own any of them anymore. I'm spread too thinly. So it's a great way of conversing across your stakeholders and communicating where you want to manage expectations or where you need help from someone. So what we've found is our teams in large groups will do this exercise and then realize one team's struggling with velocity and they'll go, another team will say, we've got some spare resources. If you want, we can help you get back on track. So it helps our teams solve their own problems by working together. And the last one here is, we've not built this as a separate process or pattern. The most successful teams in Atlassian have adapted this into their existing cadence, whether it be their team meetings, their retrospectives, their offsites. So that way it's not an adjunct in this completely separate exercise, it's part of their normal team discussion and it becomes part of their normal activities. And lastly but not leastly, on Tuesday night we launched all the material that you see in here, definitions and examples of the health monitor on the Atlassian website. So you can go to atlassian.com/health monitor. There is also a feedback mechanism in there, so if you use it, you adapt it, you try it, you learn things, you observe things, we would love it if you shared some of that. We want to iterate on this, we want to do a version 2 and a version 3 and a version 4. And so as you start to use it and you learn things in your organization, we would love it if you shared those lessons with us. So a thank you from us, and we have a few minutes left for questions.
Yep, so we're using the mobile app for questions. We probably won't have time to get to all the questions, but Ben and Dom might answer them afterwards.
No.
The first one is about, is this being recorded? The answer is yes, we'll have it in a day or so. It seems as though having amber option could allow for people to hedge. Why not just have red and green?
Yeah, good question. So what we find, we actually tried the red and green as an option, and it forced people to go green, because they really want to sit on the fence. So everything's awesome, we're always green, nothing goes wrong.
And it makes them want to game the system, and it's not about gaming it.
Yeah. So if you look at shared understanding as an example, which is why we're doing this project, you're red if no one knows why you're doing it. You're green if the team has the same shared understanding as to why. But there's lots of scenarios where you can be amber, where a few people do, a few people don't, or the understanding of why we're doing it is evolved, and we're not all on the current version. So amber gives you a chance to say, this isn't terrible, it's not completely shot, we've just got a small increment to get it to green.